first thing I did was I wrote this script. I was like 20 or 21 years old. And I said kind of like, this is for me. You know, I got to figure out a way to make movies. The movie that got made, the first one that got made was Wise Guys. The Brian De Palma movie with Danny DeVito and Joe Piscopo. And I wrote that when I was about 27. I actually wrote Bad Boys before I wrote Midnight Run. Bad Boys was, Paramount purchased the screenplay, and it was a pitch that I had, and I pitched it to Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, and Don was great, and may he rest in peace. He really, Don was one of those guys where you could go sit down with him, and he was very fast, you know, and he didn't want, it's so much different today where you do the very detailed pitch, and you say the guy drives a red Chevy and, you know, wears a blue suit. I mean, they want it, today they want everything and they still don't know. I mean, it's a whole different business. Don would say, what's the story in 25 words or less? If you could tell it in 25 words or less and he could see a movie, he'd say, fine, go write it. Here's a check, go write it. I mean, it was real old Hollywood stuff, you know, which again it's not like that today. Today it's committees and this and that. And, you know, by the time you get the job, you're like, why did I want to do this in the first place? It doesn't even resemble what I had in my head, you know. But so I wrote Bad Boys first, and Marty Brest, who had just done Beverly Hills Cop for Don and Jerry, they gave him a script to read when I handed it in to them, and he didn't want to do another cop movie because he just did a cop movie. So the way Midnight Run happened is like one of those strange things. I'd seen Marty around the lot, the Paramount lot, and I didn't know him. And I was walking, I remember I had a meeting with Don and Jerry, and this fate. I was walking to my car, and I forgot something, and I went back to the office and got it, to Don and Jerry's office. And as I'm walking back, who comes through the parking lot but Marty Brest? I figure, well, you know, I'll break his chops a little bit, you know. So, and we hit it off instantly. So I said, hey, Marty, I understand you read my script. And he goes, yeah, it was a really good script. He said, but I just don't want to do another cop movie. And he said, what else have you got? And I said, I've got this half-baked thing in my head about a bounty hunter. And he was like, well, what, there still are bounty hunters today? And I was like, yeah, believe it or not, there are. And they still operate under like some obscure law from like 1853, because it's you're kidnapping somebody, and but you're doing it because someone hired you to do it. So it's a weird law, you know. And if you read it, it's like something right out of the Wild West. If one man pays another man, you know, to capture a third man, you know. Anyway, it's just. But anyway, and so Marty says, "Well, tell me about it." So we went back to his office, and I sat down. And I said, "Look, this is all I've got. I've got this guy, and and the guy's an accountant, and he gave money to." You know, he stole money and he gave it out to charity, but because he found that he was working for a mob accountant firm, which is something I read about in the paper. There was a guy that was working for a mob boss and didn't realize he was doing his books. I thought that was an interesting character idea. Gave it out to charity. I mean, basically the story of Midnight Run.
It was foolish. But taking $15 million of mob money and giving it to charity was good for a lot of people.
Oh, so you pissed off a mafioso killer just to be loved by a bunch of fucking strangers. That makes a lot of sense.
Don't you want to?
And Marty said, it sounds great. And I remember I was sitting, there's a coffee shop not far from here. You know, there were no cell phones then. And then I was checking in my messages at home, and one of them was, Robert De Niro wants to do Midnight Run. And I was like, I hung up. It was my agent. I hung up and I was like, Robert De Niro? I mean, this is a fucking comedy. And I was like, really? Then I was like, well, that could be a brilliant idea. I just never, but you know, because Jack Walsh, that character was such a, you know, he was such a pent up guy. I was thinking like, that's fucking genius, you know? So I started telling my friends, they were like, get the fuck out of here. I'm like, no, for real. It's like, it's the message I got. So anyway, then I met Bob, and he couldn't have been nicer, and then started the whole process of who was going to play the role of Jonathan Mardukas, and every actor in town came in and read for that part. I mean, at one point, I remember Cher had just come off of Moonstruck, right, and won the Academy Award, and Paramount was pushing Marty very hard to cast Cher in the role of the Charles Grodin part. And I mean, really pushing hard. And to the point where I remember we were sitting around in his office, it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, because we were always working on the script. And he goes, what do you think of Cher? And I'm like, and I remember saying to Marty, Well, it's a different movie to say the least. And I mean, De Niro's going to say to Cher, "I'm going to stick your head in a fucking toilet bowl and make it stay there." I says, well, and he was like, "You're right, God damn it." I mean, he, I think for like one maybe hair of a second, he was considering.
If I hear any more shit out of you, I'm gonna fucking bust your head and I'm gonna put you back in that fucking hole and I'm gonna stick your head in the fucking toilet bowl and I'm gonna make it stay there.
I mean, I had no idea who that actor should be. But when Grodin came into the room and sat next to De Niro, and he started fucking with him, it's like you knew instantly, oh my God, this is just great. He was just, he did this sort of repelled kind of thing where he was staring at Bob, and I mean, you knew instantly, oh my God, this is it.
And I'm not very popular with the Chicago Police Department, okay?
Why aren't you popular with Chicago Police
That's
Department?
a whole other... What, do we know each other?
Why?
Why?
Marty said, I want Charles Grodin to play the part, because I think they did a screen test. And Paramount wanted to, starfuck the movie, and Marty said, no, that's not what I want to do. This is the movie I want to make. And then he called Casey Silver at Universal, who was the president, I think, at the time, and it was like Thursday. This is no bullshit. Thursday we were at Paramount, and Friday we were at Universal. And then Marty said, you're coming with me. We're gonna go make the movie, and I need you there every day. And I was like, okay, great.
Looks like a package deal to me, Mom.
God damn it. Come on, both of you.
I have to tell you, Marty is the most, I have so much respect for him. I mean, during the course of that movie, I was young, and he was breaking my balls a lot, okay? But he made me the best writer I could be. It was never good enough, to the point like I wanted to fucking choke him, okay? But he was like, is this the best you could do? Well, if it's not the best you could do, why did you give it to me? I mean, he would just, I'd be like, I'm trying to work out some ideas, and he's just tough. But he is steadfastly committed to making it great, and nothing will get in his way. He just is very, very tough, and I guess could be perceived as difficult. But he's only difficult to the people who don't appreciate what he's doing and how much he gives a shit about what he's doing. So I guess, yeah, if you want something to be great, right, and you could be perceived as difficult, but I'm all for it. He really, that movie is what it is because of him, and that's the truth.
You just said you were hurt.
I'm not hurt.
You just said you were
I
hurt.
didn't say I was hurt. You said I was hurt.
I asked you if you were hurt, and you said, yeah, I'm hurt.
That's because you made me say. You're starting to put words in my mouth.
Jack, you're a grown man. You have control over your own words.
You're goddamn right I do. So here come 2 words for you. Shut the fuck up.
Midnight Run is a comedy, and yes, it's a comedy. And it's the kind of stuff that I prefer to write. Afterwards, I got pulled more and more into the genre of comedy, and I have to tell you how many people don't understand comedy. If the situation is funny, okay, and the actors are playing it totally straight, you laugh. If you start like piling on this sort of isn't it funny kind of, the thing becomes self-aware and goofy to me, and I don't find it funny anymore.
Where are they? You got me. Inspector, shut up.
Marty has a tremendous strength that, and I if I could pat myself on the back, I guess it could be perceived as a strength. I guess it would be, but we love characters. We would just, Marty and I would sit around and talk about people we grew up with. And there was this guy, Marty, Mr. Reitman, I think was his name, where he used to throw cherry bombs out of his window and just scare the shit out of some old guy, walking home at night. And we would just tell stories of our childhood and all these people we grew up around. And Marty grew up in the Bronx, so I grew up in Portchester, so we grew up around these very sort of ethnic neighborhoods, and these places are just chock filled with these characters. Like my dad was a character. My uncle was a habitual gambler, and always at the track, and and my mom was a character. And to put up with all of this, and there's just a lot of fighting going on all the time, but a lot of love at the same time. Like people would literally tell each other they go fuck themselves, and 2 seconds later they're hugging and kissing. It didn't mean anything. It was just a lot of noise, and so so Marty and I loved talking about people. So down to the smallest detail, we enjoyed the notion of these people having lives, you know what I mean, having backstories. Even if you're on screen for a minute, you know, or 30 seconds, you're still a person with a backstory. You're a real human being. You know, you're not a person just saying a few lines. And so we talked about that a lot. I mean, if I may take credit, Yaphet Kotto was my idea. I said to Marty, when I wrote it, I was thinking of Yaphet Kotto.
His real name's Mosley.
I'm Mosley!
The funniest thing about, like, the Alonzo Mosley character, for instance, is that basically he doesn't crack a smile, you know, until near the end. And I said to Marty, I said, look, man, if I was on the run, Yaphet Kotto, there's just nothing, there's like no nonsense with Yaphet Kotto. And if Yaphet Kotto was a Fed, you know, I would be very nervous about that, you know. And Yaphet's the sweetest man in the world, but when he's on camera, he's just got that tough fucking persona where, like, if you make a joke, he'll just keep staring at you. Like, he's just not going to break.
Why don't you quit? It'd be cheaper for both of us.
And for Dorfler, Marty had done Beverly Hills Cop. I was thinking of John Ashton, but I was thinking of the John Ashton character had he in Beverly Hills Cop, had he kind of been slightly behind every conversation, you know, like. But I liked something about John Ashton.
Who the fuck are you? What, are you writing a book? Who the fuck are you?
Dennis was a good friend. You know, he died about 6 months ago. Yeah, Dennis was great. For that part, I know they read a lot of people, and Dennis was on Crime Story, I think, the TV show. He was an ex-cop, ex-Chicago cop, but I don't know what he'd done before. That was sort of, I think, a big role for him, like a breakout role. He was great. I liked Dennis a lot.
I got a problem. I can't fly. I don't think you're taking me seriously.
I don't like to fly, and I don't know if you know that about me. I mean, I have done it a few times since Midnight Run, but I don't like it. I almost fucked everything up for myself. I remember I was supposed to meet with Marty in Chicago because he was on a location scout, and we started shooting in New York. And he goes, meet me in Chicago, and then we'll take the plane to New York, and then we'll get you in the hotel room, and then let's start going over the script. And I remember the day that I was supposed to go to Chicago, I said, nah, I can't go, you know. And I called him up and I said, I can't get on the plane. And he was like, are you out of your fucking mind? And I was like, dude, I got a problem with this. That's why I wrote this script. Why do you think I know what Amarillo, Texas looks like? I mean, because I've driven this frickin' trip 1,000 times. You know, I've been on the train. I mean, I know these fucking places. You know, I know where they are. You know, I know what the coffee shops look like because, you know, I've stopped in all of them. And he goes, Judge, you're nuts. This is like your big break. And I'm like, I know, but I'm not getting on a plane. I can't do it, all right? So he was just beside himself. And again, so I took an Amtrak. I remember Universal made some sort of a phone call where they said that they were booked. And they were like, it was like a Ray Donovan phone call, you know, the show Ray Donovan, where they said, no, you're not. You know, you have room for somebody on that train. And they go, no, we don't. They go, yeah, you do. And I was on the train. I had a nice suite, you know, and I went to New York and I met Marty there. And then I was with them the whole time.
What the fuck are you smiling about?
I love to travel by train.
Oh, yeah? What do you think this is, a class trip?
Part of why I think that script was so good was that I didn't know what I was doing in a way. And I shouldn't say that. I knew what I was doing in terms that I had a love for film, but I had no real clue as to what it took to shoot these scenes. You know, like, oh, they fall in the rapids. Yeah, they can swim, they can fight in the rapids. That'll be great. Now that I've directed 9 movies myself. Now knowing, like, rapids, are you fucking nuts? Do you know how hard it is to shoot in rapids? You know, you naively write about blizzards and things. Oh, it's the worst blizzard ever. Do you know what it's like to shoot in a blizzard and faking snow and wind, and then you got to loop everybody afterwards because of the fans, you know? But you don't think of those things when you're, at least I didn't. I was a young writer, and I didn't know that much about how movies are made. I could see it, but they fall off a 80-foot cliff into the rapids, and then they go down the rapids, and then they fight in the rapids, and then one guy grabs a log, and the other guy comes by and grabs them, and off they go, and then but That's like a week to shoot that, you know? And then the guy's hanging on a rock, and then the other guy hands him a log, and where are you gonna put the fucking camera? You gotta put it in the water, so you gotta build a thing for the crew to go out to shoot up back. I mean, you know, it's like I didn't think of those things. You know, but anyway.
All right, I promise. I'll let you go.
I think he was deadly serious. You know, he's a very serious guy in a lot of ways, you know? But I think with me, I have to say I have a very warm place in my heart for him, you know, even though, you know, it's not like we talk a lot. We talk from time to time. But I for some reason, he responds to honesty, and he hates bullshit as far as I could tell. I mean, just despises it. So he always seemed to have a twinkle in his eye, you know, like when I was telling him stories, because he too, like Marty, just loves people and loves characters, loves what makes them tick. So like whenever I would talk about people, you know, or he would light up, you know. No, we had a lot of fun actually, because we would go out to dinner at night, sometimes just he and I. When I think about it, what the fuck? I was like 31 years old, and you know, still, you know, as my art teacher used to say, wiping my own ass was a recent development, you know? I mean, I was a young guy, and I was sitting at the table with Robert De Niro, and he'd call me up and say, George, let's grab something to eat. And I'm like, okay, and I'd hang up. That's Robert De Niro. He's gonna, you know, what the fuck does he want to hang out with me for, you know? But, I mean, honestly, just being, you know, totally honest. And but we'd go have dinner and just laugh and just tell dopey stories to each other, you know?
All right, in 10 minutes, we'll be at the Western Union office. We'll have $500. I'll buy you a nice juicy steak or whatever you want, okay?
3 salt eggs.
Huh?
3 salt eggs.
I'll get you whatever you want.
A lot of that script really was written the way it was written, and I mean, was what was shot. I was watching them all the time, so the more I got to watch them, the more I got to write things for them, you know. But some of that stuff was written like on the spot. Like for instance, when De Niro says, you know, it's a $10 fine for jaywalking in Los Angeles. You know that part where they drag? That I came up with right off the top of my head. I was on the set watching him, and I said, they're jaywalking. So he goes, what do I say? What do I say? He said, there's a $10 fine for jaywalking in Los Angeles. And he goes, great, you know. So a lot of that stuff just because I knew them and I felt comfortable enough to, you know, come up with stuff. Because like I say, I got to know them. I got to spend time with them.
You're okay, Jack. I think under different circumstances, you and I probably still would have hated each other.
There's a lot of sentiment in that movie. You know, it's counterbalanced by other things. You know, it's like a lot of times with making a movie, you can get sentimental, which the movie does, if there's something to balance it, which is all the cursing and the, you know, and that, you know, that sort of, it's that nasty sort of thing that balances it out, so it's not just all syrupy. We were driving to shoot the scene where De Niro shoots down the helicopter on the Snake River Canyon, it's called. And I was watching the dailies every day, and I was watching Billy, and Billy Weber was cutting it. And this back when there was no DVDs, it was VCRs. He was sending tapes of the scenes he had cut. And I remember I was in the car, and I said to myself, if I say this, 2 things can happen. Well, one thing certainly is if I don't have an answer to what I'm about to say, I could I not get kicked off my movie, but another writer could come in if I can't solve the issue that I'm about to bring up. And I said to Marty, I said, I think John Ashton is too lovable as Dorfler. I think he's too lovable as Dorfler to get killed, because in the original screenplay, Dorfler got killed in the end. It had a different ending. The scene where he hands over the money and asks for more money, and then they see the picture, the way it was written in the script, they had fucking had it with him, okay? And they shot him in the parking lot. They were just done with him, and now they knock him out instead. And it had a different ending at the airport. So it's a darker ending. It was a darker script. A little bit of a darker script. The movie was supposed to take a shift where you went like, holy shit, you know? And Marty turned around, he goes, you're right, I'm thinking the same thing. I remember this clearly. He was like in the front seat. He goes, "You're right." And so now he goes, "You got to come up with another ending." And I was like, "Okay, great. I just fucked myself." You know what I mean? And then I knew if I didn't come up with something, they'd be on the phone William Goldman, you know, before my body hit the ground, you know. So I gotta come up with something. And I remember I was working on it and working on it and working on it, and I know. And Marty, God bless him, he hung in there with me because I kept saying, "Marty, I can figure this out." And I remember I gave him, I came back and I gave him a bunch of pages. And then Durfler shows up at the airport. That whole thing where he fucks up the ending, that I wrote that over the Christmas holidays. And I was with my wife when I came up with that too. I remember I was thinking, what can I do? Maybe he shows up at the airport and jam cars the whole thing up, and then before you know. And I gave Marty the pages, and he looked at me and he goes, "You don't know how close you came." You know, I mean, to getting booted off of this, and I knew it, you know. But he hung in there, and so then we went and shot him.
You sick and fucking crazy! Serrano's got the dish! Serrano's got the dish!
Move in.
I remember the first time I saw it all cut together, I was like, "Holy shit, this thing is good," you know. I knew when I wrote it. I mean, for what it's worth, I literally, when I was finished with the last draft of it, I said, I can't do any better. I mean, I bled, I wrung out everything I had into it, you know. And I was also nervous. I said, if this thing goes down the toilet, then I'm really fucked, because I gave it all I had. Like, emotionally, I felt like I'd be, you know, sort of broken up, you know. But it was so well received. You know, the critics loved it. I mean, I think there was only one bad review out of like hundreds and hundreds. You know, so yeah, I felt real good. It did well. It came out the same day as Die Hard. So, and I remember, strangely enough, the producer of Die Hard called Marty, because everyone said Midnight Run was going to be the thing that was going to blow up, you know. And the producer said, "Could you move the date? Because we're nervous. We don't want to open a Bruce Willis movie against a Robert De Niro movie," because Bruce still hadn't. That was his bust out movie, Die Hard, and then Die Hard ended up doing better than Midnight Run. But Midnight Run, I mean, you know, on a dollar per dollar, I mean, they made 5 of them, right? I mean, there weren't 4 more Midnight Runs. But I don't know what you would do with Midnight Run again. I mean, there was some talk of a sequel recently, and I don't know what you would do. That story to me seems so contained. You know, and when it's over, it's really over. And, you know, I mean, look, from a commerce point of view, maybe the movie has such a following now that a sequel would be fun. But man, you know, at one point when they first asked me, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I mean, first of all, thank God, I've been married to the same woman for 31 years, so it's not like I went through like 16 divorces and I went through all my money, and I'll write anything to make a buck at this point. I mean, I really, you know, we saved our money, and, you know, we did pretty well, and then, you know, I didn't have, like, you know, so bad a drug habit that I went through all my money, you know. And I mean, you know, the 80s are gone. I survived them, you know. You know, so I wasn't sure what you could do, because it kind of, the fun of that, it'd be like making a sequel to Casablanca. I mean, it's like, you know, not that I'm saying Midnight Run is Casablanca. You know, Gallo says Midnight Run is Casablanca. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that when they walked off in the end, it was over. You know, I don't know what happened to them. I hope that they fared well in life, you know, but I don't really kind of want to know what happened. So to me, it'd be like taking a shit on something, you know.
See you in the next life. See you in the next life.
Midnight Run became such a part of the lexicon. So, I mean, if you get to do that once in your life, you're lucky, you know. Yeah, it was a great time. I wished I could go back and tell that younger kid, you know, this is about as good as it's ever going to get. You know, it's like fucking sop up every moment like a biscuit in gravy, you know. But I was a young guy, you know. I mean, just running around having fun, and maybe I experienced it the way I should have, you know. I just enjoyed it, you know.
You know, growing up poor, in my adult life, I came to understand that I was dyslexic and I had attention deficit differences, you know, so to find things that kept my interest and held my interest, and the creative arts was something when I discovered acting in high school, it was the one thing that challenged me and excited me and was entertaining and occupied my time, and time flew, within those elements, and I liked that. And also, it was an opportunity for me to make a living. I thought that this was one way to get out of the neighborhood.
You blew it, all right? You had the guy 4 fucking days, Jack. 4 days. You could have walked him backwards and not fucking blown it, but you blew it.
I remember thinking as a young man that in order to find my niche, that it was going to be as a character actor. That I wasn't a leading man. That I could make my living, and through that, then I possibly become a character lead, But Bob De Niro is a character actor. Jeff Bridges is a character actor. Tommy Lee Jones is a character actor. These, Spencer Tracy, Bob Duvall, Peter Sellers. Where the character embodies them. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. That's when I grow up.
What do you think? I'm gonna try to stiff you?
You? Never. You would never try and stiff me.
Do I detect some kind of sarcasm here?
Never.
Where
never.
where have I inherited this reputation? I have never done business with anybody, and Jerry is my witness, that I have ever. Does that phone ever ring? Has that phone ever rang with a complaint about me? Never.
The way I heard about this project was Marty Brest was somebody that I knew socially. I knew him from New York, and we had the same agent, Harry Offland, and Marty was. I got a phone call from him, and he said, "Listen, I'm doing this movie with Bob De Niro, and I knew De Niro from around the area when he was coming up. I would see him in the Village all the time, and I was a fan of his work. But actors are very competitive by nature, so it's like playing chess or tennis, and you keep your eye on the ball. I didn't have the luxury to be in awe of anybody, If anything, I was envious of the rung that they were standing on, and how could I knock them off that rung? So he said, there are these 2 guys in this thing, and you can play either one of them. Read the script and tell me what you want to do. And it was the 2 guys that chase Chuck Grodin's character. So I said, I don't want to play those guys. I'm not interested in that. He said, well, what do you want to play? I said, I want to play the accountant. He said, well, that's not going to happen. He said the only part that I said, well, what about the bail bondsman? He goes, no. He says, I got this whole idea. You're too young, and I want him to be big and fat. And I said, well, I want to be in your movie, and that's the only part that I'd be willing to play. He says, well, then you got to come in and earn it. The other 2 guys, I'll give you one of them, But if you want this part, you got to come in and win it. And so I went in, and I remember going in, and I was reading with De Niro.
Isn't Serrano the guy that ran you out of Chicago when he was running things back then?
He didn't run me out.
Yeah, right. You give up being a cop to do this shit.
De Niro held out his hand, and he says, where's my money? And I took his hand, and I shook it. I shook his hand like, my buddy, and I cupped his hand, and I said, what's the matter with you? I said, don't you, stop it. You don't trust me? What do you think? I'm not going to pay you? I put his hand on my heart, whatever I did. But I could see De Niro wake up, like, you know, like, oh, this guy's got something going on here.
I mean, it's only a matter of time before Serrano vanishes this guy from the planet, and I'm out 450,000.
You're out 450,000 on this guy?
No,
No.
no, because I got you, and you're the best, and you're gonna find him and bring him back.
And then later in the day, my agent said, I got good news and I've got bad news. He said, the good news is you got the part, but the bad news is the movie just went into turnaround and they're not doing it at Paramount. The following day or 2 days later, it was set up at Universal. So I had a job.
Jesus, Jack, where the hell you been?
Jack, I want to talk to him. Jack, where are you?
Once I got the job, now they were auditioning the guys that played my assistant, the guy that worked for me. So they wanted me to read with Bob De Niro and the actors that were coming in for that part. So I was in the room with Marty and Bob and Michael Chinich, who was the casting director, and I think Bill Gilmore was the producer. And what was really compelling to me, what I learned was I saw some really terrific actors that I really admired their work. And they came in and they lost their lunch over De Niro. They completely lost their game face, you know, and they were compelled to tell him what he meant to them. And every time they opened their mouth, they lost a job. And there was a break. It was like a 15-minute break where everybody got some lunch, you used the bathroom, and I was just hanging out in the office with Michael, and Michael, you know, said, you know, it's the 5 minutes in this room that determines whether you're not, you know, this is where you win the job. And if you don't come in with your game face on and have that determination to get that job, once you get the job, going to work is easy. You know, that's where the fun is. But it's coming in here and doing what you need to do in order to create a character that's convincing and appealing and you know, that is that perfect piece, because we all want, and everybody that comes in, we want them to be great. You know, it's embarrassing as a buyer. You know, when somebody comes in and they're not prepared, or it's embarrassing. It's uncomfortable to watch. So that was probably the greatest lesson I ever had.
You got him. Already?
Sure do. Want to say hello? Say hello to your bail bondsman, Eddie Moscone.
Hello.
Jack, I love you.
Selfishly, when I want to be a part of something, you know, it's got, first of all, I don't look at the part, I look at the whole. You know, it's the movie. It's like the story. Does it hold? Does it track? Is it interesting? You know, it's really a lot easier to be good in a movie that's well written than it is to be in a movie that is not. But in this case, you know, you had Marty Brest, who was really a great director. It was a comedy. The Gallo script is one of the best written scripts. I mean, it was just like the twists and turns. It was like being on a roller coaster. I had to read the friggin' thing 3 or 4 times to just, you know, have it sinking in my head. And, you know, and I wanted to work with De Niro.
Wait a minute.
You put Marvin on this case, you fucking piece of shit.
You fucking deceptive! You vermin, you
Are you fucking done yet?
You slime ball in the sea of pus.
All of the scenes that we had on the phone, we were always on the phone with each other. So, you know, sometimes when you do those scenes, you're talking to a script supervisor. It was great. I mean, you know, I think the injustice that occurs to somebody like Bob De Niro or even Meryl Streep is what, you know, is what people put on them. You know, a certain kind of emulation where De Niro was just a hard-working actor that, you know, that came in and wanted to run lines and was just, you know, like any other good actor I ever worked with. if anything, I could see the smoke and mirrors too. You know, I could see moments working with him where it's like, well, Jesus, he's just like me. You know, these guys are just like me. I could do that.
You gotta be back here in less than 2.5 fucking days. $500,000 of my money. What the fuck is going on there?
Eddie, I swear to God, don't start with me now, or I will shoot him and I will dump him in a fucking swamp. You know, I think that that this was like the first balls out comedy that De Niro ever worked on, and I think that Marty really opened him up, and in that, you know, and also Grodin, who I think is, you know, Grodin is a genius comedian. I think that if anything, that Charles Grodin was the glue of this movie, because he actually set the tone. Because nobody's going for laughs, you know. It's deadly serious, and out of it, all of this comedy comes out of it.
Oh, no, come on. Cigarettes are killers.
So are women.
Not the right woman. My wife and I have a wonderful relationship. She stuck it out with me through all of this.
Yeah, stuck it out with you and all your millions. What a trooper. It was like flawless. Everybody, all of the actors, even that. I still remember the woman at the ticket counter. You know, that little thing. But that credit goes to Marty Brest too. You know, Marty Brest has a terrific eye, and also a determination. He doesn't settle. So it'll go on and on and on and on and on for a long time. You know, and you do a lot of takes with Martin. He's great.
I want this guy taken out, and I want him taken out fast. You and that other dummy better start getting more personally involved in your work, or I'm going to stab you through the heart with a fucking pencil. Do you understand me?
Dennis Farina, for Christ's sakes, you know, what an actor. And what he did with that part. Each character, Ashton, Kodo, you know, Yaphet, for Christ. I mean, and they've done a TV series version of this. They're talking about doing a Midnight Run sequel now. You know, but they don't think about the elements that made it successful in the first place. You know, it's like they want to do, you know, they're talking about Midnight Run 2, but they don't call up George Gallo or they don't call up Marty Brest. It's nuts.
Now listen also. Get Dorfler down there. Find him and get him down there too.
Ultimately, you have very little to do with it. You know, the idea, I mean, the good fortune comes in. It's like, how do you get there? How did I get there? How did I get to be a part of it? I mean, I've done over 150 movies in my career, of which, you know, 6 or 7. There have been 6 or 7 occasions where people wanted to come and interview me about them. You know, so it's like, I'm just lucky to have had that many movies that people that have staying power, that are timeless. I was very proud of being a part of it.
Actually, I was pretty much a juvenile delinquent when I was a kid back east. And out of the blue, the director of our high school play came up to me one day and said, "Do you want to be in this play?" And it happened to be Oklahoma. It was a musical. And he wanted me to play Jed Fry. So I said, "Sure, I got nothing to do."
Yeah, I'm listening.
It saved my life. It really saved my life. Had I not become an actor, I'd have been dead years ago.
Hey, scumbag.
My name's Carmine, fucko.
Yeah, well, Carmine, today's your lucky day.
I'd get this call from a casting person in New York. And I was in LA. And she said, "I'd like to meet you." And I said, "Okay." So I go in for the meeting. And she said, "You know, John, I'm doing this film that there's nothing in it for you. But I really wanted to meet you. But there's absolutely nothing in this film for you." And I said, "Well, that's fine." She said, "I saw your production of True West. You and Eddie were just fantastic." And I said, "Well, what's the film?" And she said, "Beverly Hills Cop." When we started that film, Taggart and Rosewood were very, very small parts. And they'd shoot Judge and I sitting in the car, you know, drinking coffee and looking up in the room and stuff like that. So, you know, Marty would shoot that for 2 or 3 takes. Okay, we got that. Then Marty would come over and go, why don't you guys start ad-lib? Because he, you know, I mean, he liked the stuff I was doing in the audition, so guys start ad-libbing stuff. So they roll the cameras, and Judge happened to have a magazine that he was reading in between takes, for real. So they roll the cameras, and Judge opens the magazine, he goes, wow, did you know that by the time you're 50 years old, there's 12 pounds of undigested meat in your system? And I looked at him, I said, why are you telling me that? What makes you think I have any interest in that at all? And he goes, well, you eat a lot of meat. And they left it in. I mean, Marty was wonderful that way. So our relationship and our characters built over the time, and we become co-stars of the film, you know, and originally they weren't very big parts. Segue, a couple of years later, now we'll get into Midnight Run. A wonderful, wonderful actor, and the best breakdown script person I ever met in my life, who has since died, bless his soul, Alan Vint. I'm at a play. I'm going to see Joey Pants in a play, Joey Pantoliano. And we're at intermission, and Alan comes over to me, and he says, have you read Midnight Run yet? And I said, no, what's that? And he goes, it's a movie they're doing. He said, you're perfect for it. And I said, I haven't heard anything about it. And he said, well, you get the script and read. And he said, you're perfect for this. You got to do this. So I call my agent and stuff, and I get the script, and I read it, and I said, man, I got to do this, you know. Marty's directing it, right? So I called Marty, we have a meeting and stuff, and he said, yeah, you'd be good in this. You'd be really good in this. And I'm waiting for him to offer me the role, you know. And he goes, well, yeah, you'd be really good in this. And I said, yeah, and he goes, no. So he said, you want to use your audition for it? And I said, what do you mean audition for it? And he goes, well, Bob wants to audition with everybody, which is wonderful. And you don't see a lot of stars doing that. And Bobby's wonderful that way. And he wanted to read with everybody. And he was there for it. It's not like you're reading with a casting director. You're reading with him. So I go into the audition. And Marty, of course, I knew Marty, and George Gallo was there, the writer, who wrote a great script. And so, you know, they're all in the room, and I'm outside waiting to go in, and there's 30 guys out there reading for Dorfler. And they're all pacing up and down the hallways, and, oh God, I gotta read with Bob, you know, and they're like freaking out. And I was so excited, you know, because I'm a stage actor. I couldn't wait to get in there. And I knew that role was mine. And I said, nobody's taking this role from me. Nobody's taking this role from me. And there were some pretty good actors in that hallway. So I get my turn, I go in. And George Gallo, the writer, and Marty, and producers, and everybody's sitting in there. Bob is sitting there, hi, nice to meet you, and blah, blah. So we small talk for 15 seconds or 20 seconds, and Marty said, hold on a minute, I gotta go do something. And he gets up and leaves with George, and I know and Marty hasn't admitted this, but I know he just wanted to leave me and Bob alone. So they all leave, and so Bob and I sit there and chat for 2-3 minutes and stuff. So they come back in and we start reading this scene. And we got the script, and Bob says, well, here, and he goes to hand me something in the middle of the reading, and I go to reach for it, and he dropped it on the floor. As I tried to grab it, he dropped it on the floor. And he just stared at me. And I looked down on it, and I looked up at him, and I said, fuck you. And he said, fuck you too. I said, fuck you. Like he wanted me to pick it up. I said, I ain't picking that fucking thing up, fuck you. But we did it in character. you know? And, okay, cut. Well, I got it. And I found out later from George, actually told me, when I walked out of the room, Bobby said, I want him. Because I'll bet you that every other actor picked it up and handed it to him. Here you go. Sorry, Mr. De Niro. And I looked at him and said, fuck you.
Okay, Marvin, what the hell are we fighting for? We're friends.
Hey, nothing personal, Jack, but fuck off, all right?
And that's why I really wanted to do it, because trust me, after Beverly Hills Cop came out, I was taggart. I was taggart to the world. I was taggart to Hollywood. I was taggart to anybody who would ever listen. I walk in a golf course, hey, Taggart! You know, he's like, and it was killing me as an actor. It was killing me as an actor. Because I was a character actor. I mean, I did a lot of stage. I did theater at the Edinburgh Arts Festival, and did repertory theater in Germany and Scotland and England, and all of a sudden I'm freaking Taggart, you know? I mean, and I love the character, don't get me wrong, but I didn't want to be known as Taggart the rest of my life. And when that came up, I just said, this is such a dichotomy and such an opposite of Taggart that I want that, you know, for my career and for my life, you know?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Got the whole fucking force after me, huh?
Bob came up to me and he said, I met this bounty hunter, a real bounty hunter in New York. He said, let's go out with him. So I said, okay. So Bob goes out with him one night. I go out with the guy the other night. Every other word out of the guy's mouth was fuck. I mean, fuck the fucking thing and the fucking. And so, I mean, I'm out with the guy till like 3 in the morning, this bounty, and his license plate was, well, I probably shouldn't say that, but I mean, he was not hiding the fact that he was a bounty hunter. And he had all these radios and stuff in his car, and we'd go from bar to bar to bar to bar to bar, you know, and he was always looking for somebody and doing stuff, and fuck. What's going? And I'm trying to get, but you know, he had some wardrobe and stuff on him that he like chains and stuff. I said, well, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that from this, and so I got the chain thing on, and I got the ring and stuff. And I said, oh, I'll use that. So I wore that little horseshoe ring in the movie and stuff. And the guy was a trip. So 3 in the morning, he goes, he gets a radio call, and he's got to go to some drug bust down in Brooklyn or somewhere, you know. And I go, you know what? I think I got enough material. You go to the drug bust, drop me off at the hotel.
Did Eddie put you on this?
Of course Eddie put me on this.
Son of a bitch. You know I have a contract with him?
You got a contract?
Yeah, I signed it on Monday.
You called me in Pittsburgh. You said you were fucking this thing up.
I'm not fucking anything up.
So Bob and I had our fuck meter. Right? I mean, we wanted to be true to the characters, but you see a lot of movies where there's just gratuitous fucks in it, you know? And we didn't want that. We wanted to use them when they meant something, you know? And so we had a fuck meter. And our fuck meter was Frank Pesci in Beverly Hills Cop. And if you remember in the beginning when Eddie got the cigarettes in the back of the truck in Beverly Hills Cop, and Frankie comes in, and Eddie goes, well, I thought you wanted, I was gonna get 5,000. He says, oh, we only got 2,000, whatever the lines were. And he says, and Frankie says, take the fucking 2 fucking grand, and Bobby and I both said, 1 too many fucks. There's 1 too many fucks in that. Take the fucking 2 fucking grand. He said it should be take the fucking 2 grand or take the 2 fucking grand, but not take the fucking 2 fucking grand. There's 1 too many fucks in that. So that was our fuck meter.
You give me a fucking get back down, Marvin!
Don't fuck me, Jack!
Honest to God, we would do a scene and Bobby would look at me or I'd look at Bobby. We go, too many fucks? And he'd go, no, I think it was the right many fucks. That was.
I just want to ask you a question, that's all. Yeah, fucking A, help yourself.
Well, I chose to smoke Camels. You know, I wanted to be tough, you know. You got to smoke Camels. Well, you know, and I should have known this, being an actor, I should have known that, you Okay, cut, let's do it again. Then you gotta match your size of it, so you gotta light a new one. And I would smoke like 3 or 4 packs a day. And I didn't smoke, you know, and I was like, oh, I smoke cigars, but I was, at the end of the day, I went, oh, what a bad choice that was, man. So I was smoking. But we were shooting that scene in the airport, right? And Marty Brest played the airline ticket guy. That's Marty. So that's why I love Marty. So I got a cigarette. You could smoke in the airport then. So I got a cigarette, and Marty ad-libs the line to me, because there was, you know, it was like 2 tickets to L.A., boom, or 1 ticket to L.A., or whatever. So I'm smoking, and Marty goes, will I be smoking or not smoking? And I said, take a wild guess. I mean, we had a really good time on that film. I mean, we really became a family on that film.
See you in L.A., Marvin.
Watch your cigarettes with this guy, Jack.
When they were dragging me out, and I said, watch your cigarettes with that guy, Jack, you know, with Yaphet, you know, and he's always bumming cigarettes from me. And that happened in real life. We were out having dinner. George and I were out having dinner, and George bummed a cigarette. George was always bumming cigarettes, right? So he bummed a cigarette off me at dinner, right? And I said, why don't you quit? It'd be cheaper for both of us, you know? So he said, that's a great fucking line.
Why don't you quit? Be cheaper for both of us.
That's why Marty's such a great director. He trusts you and he lets you do that. And you know, it's a camera, it's film. We can cut it. If it doesn't work, we'll cut it. Don't worry. So, I mean, as an actor, man, you just feel so free. You know, I mean, I can do anything. They can cut it.
Now you listen, you son of a bitch. I want answers and I want them right now. What do you want from me? I don't know nothing.
George Gallo wrote such a great script. Man, you have that blueprint. I mean, it's just, wow, man, I can really now just like my character.
Who the fuck are you guys?
Who the fuck are you?
Dorfler was really a real scumbag in the original script. I mean, a real scum. And I didn't see him that way when I read it. I read him as, this is my fucking job, you're in my way. And he was an honest piece of shit. You know?
Hello, Jack. You dumb shit.
But I didn't see him as a scumbag. I saw him as a guy trying to do his job. In the original script, Dorfler gets killed in Vegas. Boom, they off him. So we're about 2 months into shooting, and the studio's seeing all the dailies and stuff. So they come up to me, and I forget where we were at that time, in Pennsylvania or Chicago or someplace. And they said, we can't kill Dorfler. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, we're afraid that the audience is really going to be pissed if, you know, because Dorfler's kind of a likable guy, you know. And if we kill him, we're afraid we're going to lose the audience, you know. And Marty comes over and talks to me about it. He said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, it's fine with me, and, you know. So now George Gallo has got to go rewrite from that point on in the film to the end and leave me in, where I come in at the end at the airport and screw everything up and do all that stuff. Best film I ever did. Best film experience I ever had. Bar none. And the family that we got to become over 6 months, you know, because you're 14 hours on the set every day and you're going out to dinner every night. I mean, that was your family. They asked me to do the advice to the undergraduate speech in my high school in 1966, and that was right in the middle of the Vietnam War, and that's when I decided to become an actor. Right in the middle of the Vietnam War, my brother was in Vietnam at the time, he was a helicopter pilot, and I got up at the graduation and I gave the advice to the undergraduate speech. And it was kind of a funny speech, you know, giving them bad advice and stuff. And I saw that group of people out there, and for an hour, they got to escape from all the bullshit that was happening in the world. And they got into that one room for an hour and a half, and got to escape. And I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to take people away from their shit in their life and take them to another place. And that's when I became an actor. And movies are escape. And that's why I love Marty so much. He let you escape. Get into the character. Have some fun.
Well, I think a lot of people wanted to play the role that I played. Bob De Niro was set, and I remember several hours of auditioning on more than a couple of days, hours and hours on end. Well, they let me improvise, and when they said that, I thought I had a good opportunity, a good chance of it happening.
You seen any suspicious-looking characters around here?
No.
Do you live around here?
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing like if you can have it actually develop between the two people. It is something else. So this is after several hours of doing this, and then Marty Bress, the director, he called me from an airplane. He wanted me to fly out to do a screen test. And I said, well, what is it you want to see that you haven't seen? Because I'm a director, you know. And I couldn't hear what he said. Well, when you do a screen test, you have to agree to a payment. What you would get if they want, you have to agree to that ahead of time. So I asked for like 4 times what I had been getting. And he called back and said, if you didn't have to do the screen test, would you do it for less? I said, sure. So that was like 2.5, 3 times of what I was getting. And that's how it came to be. But it's amazing. I think even Robin Williams, God rest him, wanted to do this. You know, and someone told me recently that De Niro said, I don't want to do it if it's not with me. Who knows?
You know, when we change buses in Chicago, you're going to have a couple hours. I think you would be a better man if you used that time to look up your ex-wife and daughter. It's a perfect opportunity.
I think Paramount wanted to do it with Cher. Go figure. Yeah, I don't know who the head of the studio was at that time, but I know a few years later when they wanted me to do the Beethoven, Ivan Reitman wanted me to do the Beethoven movies, the head of the studio said he's not likable enough. Now, I don't remember knowing this guy, and Ivan, who never met me, said he's plenty likable. And that was the end of that, because Ivan could say that he had done a lot of big hit movies. And I think about something like that, for somebody to say he's not likable enough, it's probably because I treated him the same way I treat everyone else. And I just have the same way of talking to everybody. Why were you so unpopular with the Chicago Police Department? So Laurence Olivier came backstage. I was in a play on Broadway same time next year. I thought we had just a decent chat. And I later heard that the woman with him couldn't get over my behavior toward Sir Lawrence. And that was because I'm talking the way I'm talking to you. I don't know another way of talking. But certain people, I had that experience after that with the Duchess of Gloucester, who's a cousin of the Queen of England. I went to see a film at the British Film Institute, and she was up on a platform. And I remember somebody from, I guess, the Institutes, all the English people were up there on the platform. He said, I think it would be nice if the Duchess met Charles Grodin. Nobody turned around. And then he said, he's a major American film star. Everybody turned around. Suddenly I'm on a platform even higher with the Duchess. You couldn't talk about the movie because it was about necrophilia. So I admired the chandelier. Then because I couldn't think of anything else to say, I said, I've never met royalty before. What's the main focus of your life? And she looked at me like she couldn't believe. She said, I would never ask you such a question, but since you asked me, family and friends, what's the main focus of your life? And I said, family and friends. Then the world went on. I mean, it's amazing. Some people really get into their head. You became royalty by winning a war and declaring yourself king. But some people get into their head that they're better than others, and it's foolish.
Did you get yourself a new watch?
Tell you when I know you're better.
You know me better. When are you going to get to know me better? I'll get to know you better. You're not going to get to know me better.
Shut up.
That's what I mean.
I remember sitting in a room with Marty Brest and De Niro, and you know me, I'm never at a loss for words, and he doesn't say all that much, you know. What about the and he says, why doesn't somebody type up what Chuck is saying? Never forget that. Are you familiar with a dish of a potato dish, Lyonnaise potato? It's a kind of a fried potato. He did whatever he was doing, and it seems to work for him. I don't even know. It's hard for me to even. I just kind of relate to the situation instinctively, and just go with that.
How much is the coffee?
It's 53 cents.
How much is tea?
53 cents.
Love tea.
I just kind of show up, and somehow it's kind of. I think what I do is, after 8 years of studying, I just kind of like lend myself to it, and there I am with this guy. He's taken me in to where I'll probably be killed, and I can just go with it. I just go with that reality and listen to what he's saying and what's going on, you know. It's just, well, it helps that I don't deal with nerves. That's a big deal, and because I've done a fair share of directing, it's unusual. Most people do deal with nerves. It's kind of natural to deal with nerves. I like to say to people that I'm never more relaxed than when I do a one-man show, because no one will say, why is he talking?
Jack, you're a grown man. You have control over your own words.
You're goddamn right I do. So here come 2 words for you. Shut the fuck up.
This is very dramatic. I don't know if it's the kind of thing you want to even use, but I remember in that scene where we're going to visit his ex-wife. Talk about looking around. I've just written a play about looking for signs of an afterlife. I got word that my ex-wife, my first wife, died that day that we're visiting his wife. I had a very unusual first marriage. We weren't even a couple, but neither one of us believed in abortion. So we had a baby, and she left after 2 years. Well, people must have thought I was a maniac. Why would you leave with a 2-year-old baby? She came back, left after 4 years. And then we got divorced in 1967. And I continued to relate to her as though she was my wife. I paid the bills and bought her a house in Sag Harbor and all this stuff. And she told our daughter, who's now the age she was when she passed, I'll never forget this. It's so sad and so strange. She said at the end of her life, she said, I think I made a big mistake. He's actually a great guy. She couldn't handle being, I think it was Milt Kamen. There was a comedian, he's deceased now. He had a line, he said, the reason he never got married is because when he'd come home, there'd be someone in his apartment. That was Julie. And it's heartbreaking, really. I mean, I'm married now for 32 years to the only woman I planned to marry or wanted to marry, you know. That happened within 1 hour. That's another strange thing. Within 1 hour, she came to interview me for American Film, and within 1 hour, I'm taking a look at her, you know. Very unusual woman, and I mean, it was like 2 months before the wedding. I'm reading Variety. I was doing a lot of movies, and she very casually says to me, "Oh, there's a story about my dad in Variety." Well, I had never asked any woman, "What does your father do?" I don't know. I don't know what it says about me. I just didn't. I wasn't. The founder of AMC Cinema invented the multiplex. It started with 8 theaters and turned it into 3,000 theaters. And I got to know him. He was a piece of work, too. I remember sitting with him, and he had divorced my wife's mother at that point. They were divorced, and I don't forget, he said, he called, Alyssa's her name, he said, "Ever been published, Liz?" Well, God, she was a critic for the Times of London, and her father didn't seem to know that. So I guess when you have 3,000 theaters, and he came up with an idea, he told me this story. His father had 8 theaters, and he had an idea for something to sell in the lobby that they weren't selling. And his father said, "What's that?" His father, who's really a tough customer too, I didn't know him. And he said, and my wife's father said, "Popcorn." and his father slammed his fist down on the table. That is the dumbest idea I have ever heard. Talk about you can't make this up.
Jack? What? Which further do you think we have to go? None of your fucking business. No, because, you know, eventually I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom. Shut the fuck up.
I particularly remember there's a scene where we jump aboard a freight car of some kind in a train, and we're like, I'm trying to keep him away from me, and he lets himself down through the roof or something like that. We're definitely, he's got a big problem with me, but the scene after that, we seem to be friendly, but there wasn't any scene. So Marty Brest is sitting in a corner of this freight car. De Niro's warming his hands over a fire that he lit, and I'm sitting in the corner handcuffed to the side of the car, and I'm just supposed to do something that makes him friendly with me again. It wasn't written at all. So I was doing what I'm doing, and I remember Marty Brest coming over and leaning down to me and saying, you know, I just, you know what I think of you, but this is not working. Okay, you know, suddenly I've got that responsibility. That's where I said, you ever think of having sex with an animal?
Did you ever have sex with an animal, Jack?
And that got him. That actually did, because he wasn't going to look amused or bemused for the sake of the scene. He wasn't going to do it. I mean, it's an interesting way to go.
There's some good-looking chickens there, Jack. You know, between us.
Yeah, a couple there might have taken a shot at.
I particularly remember the Rapids scene, which was done in Arizona, and you really would have died. You would have frozen to death. You couldn't go into it, and they had to pull me out instantly. First of all, I began to sink and freeze at the same time, and then they pulled me out, and De Niro came down. He was supposed to swim across this body of water. He said, "How is it?" I said, "When you're swimming, keep your hands in your pockets." So we went to New Zealand to film that, and I mean, I'm sure it was better. It's a big year, 1987 for me, because my son was born that year. So I remember that, you know, something.
Rose, let me go! Fuck you! You're making it very difficult for me to do the right thing here!
I looked at it recently. Yeah, it's a good movie. It's everybody in it. Everybody, you know, the Joe Pantoliano, you know, they're all like, wow, born to play these parts. Yeah, I really had a very good time there. It's my favorite movie. If, you know, to say why, I don't know.